Hello and welcome to SOC Analyst Appreciation Day. We've got an exciting panel for you this afternoon. My name's Kane Fraser and I'm the Regional Director of Devo. What we might do is just give people another 30 seconds or 45 seconds to join the cast and then we'll get started. For those of you that have joined, you'll notice that there is an opportunity to ask questions. So throughout the panel discussion, we encourage you to use the Q&A function and raise any topics you'd like to potentially have tabled with the panel. Okay, so let's get started. So the purpose of today and SOC Analyst Appreciation Day is to really recognize the unsung heroes in the cybersecurity industry. Lots of people have forged a career through the SOC and gone on into quite exciting leadership roles. And I know from my personal experience in a career, and at least in IT, getting access to mentors and leaders has helped forge my personal career. And I attribute lots of growth of not only myself, but people in the industry to getting access to talent. So the purpose of today is not only to sing the praises of SOC analysts, but it's to give SOC analysts a forum to connect with leaders and be coached and get guidance. So this is the second SOC Analyst Appreciation Day we've run, and this year, undoubtedly, it's bigger and better than last year. Before I hand over to our moderator, Dave Fairman, I have some awards to announce. So as part of the SOC Analyst Appreciation Day, there's an opportunity for security leaders, SOC analysts, security engineers to nominate their peers, somebody they work alongside currently or they've worked with in the past, for an award. And so today what we're going to be doing is announcing the 4 award winners for APAC. The first is Ruolin Zhang. So Ruolin Zhang is the security engineer for Devo in Singapore, and she was nominated for the award of an unflappable analyst. So congratulations. The second award winner is Leong Kok Heng. Leong Kok was, or is the SIEM engineer, is a SIEM engineer at Ensign Info Security. And so Leong Kok was nominated for the Best Collaborator, which is obviously a critical function inside any SOC. The third, nominated for the Continuous Learner, was Zishan Ansari. And Zishan joins us from Traveloka, where he is a security engineer. Congratulations, Zishan. And finally, our fourth winner from PowerCo in New Zealand is David Cunniff. So David is a senior information security analyst at PowerCo, a utility company in New Zealand. So congratulations to all the award winners. We'll work with our marketing team to get your prizes, and we congratulate all of you. With that, I will hand over to David Fairman, our moderator for today, to introduce the panel, and we'll get started.
Kane, thank you very much. Before we get started, big congratulations to all the winners. I know it was a very competitive, nomination again this year. You should be proud, and everybody who was nominated should be proud of their own efforts just to even be recognised. So, well done for those winners, and well done for everyone for getting nominated. Secondly, before we kick off and we do the introductions, I just want to say, Kane, thank you very much for inviting me back again this year. As you said, this is the second one. We did the first one last year. Clearly, you thought I did a half-decent job to get me back in a second year. I'll try not to let you down. And really looking forward to this discussion. And as you said, and for the audience, as Kane said, the term unsung heroes, I think, is a really, really good term for SOC analysts. They are the heart and soul of any cybersecurity operations organisation, and they are the lifeblood that keeps that running. And, I think it's a tough job, but it's invaluable, and it allows you to grow in many ways in your career, and we're going to explore that today. So look, without any further ado, I'm going to get on and look to introduce the panel, and we're going to get stuck in, and we're going to hopefully give you something to walk away with, at least some food for thought, some pointers, and maybe spawn some thinking there for you. A little bit about me. I'm David Fairman. I'm the CIO and CSO for Netskope in APAC. I'm also a special advisor to Devo, long-time banking and finance, CSO, CISO across the globe. So I've worked in the US, Asia, and in Europe in large financial institutions. So I'm very passionate about security operations and talent management, because I would not have been successful if I hadn't been able to build successful and high-performing teams. So this is what this is about today. Catherine, maybe you can, I'll hand over to you, maybe you can give a quick introduction about yourself.
Thanks, David. I'm Catherine Bueller. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer of Energy Australia. I've had a couple of CISO roles across the energy sector and also across manufacturing, but also worked in security throughout the financial services sector. Interestingly, I started my career, there was no security operations centre, but I started my career as a network operator. So very aware of some of the things that you guys and girls go through.
Rob, I'll throw to you.
Thanks, Dave. The name's Rob Smith. I'm Executive for Cybersecurity at National Australia Bank, or NAB in Australia. I've sort of had a career across consulting, penetration testing, architecture, and had the privilege of leading my first security operations centre from about 2015 onwards. And, the term unsung hero, Dave, to your point, couldn't be truer words.
Great, thanks. Joyce, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce from Hong Kong. So I'm happy to join the panel today. And I'm currently the head of cybersecurity operations at the Hong Kong Jockey Club, which is a charity organization and is also a world-class racing club in Hong Kong. So in the past 10 years, I've been in the industry heading different SOC team in different industry, including the public sector and also private sector. I believe it is a very achieving job because I cannot do it on myself. So it's a team of highly professional security analysts that work together with one goal, same goal, that can achieve every day-to-day challenge. So thank you.
Okay, and Frank, would you care to say a few words and let us know a little bit about your background and Powerflare?
Thanks, David, and look, thanks for having me on today. I completely agree with the cause. I just wanted to say how important it is to recognise the unsung heroes that are the SOC operations team. My background comes from a uniform place. So I was a soldier and then subsequently spent a lot of time in both offensive and defensive cyber operations in federal government, police, law enforcement. I'm currently the CTO and also co-founder of Paraflare, and we run one of the larger SOCs in the Australian region. So thanks for having me on, David.
Right. All right. So, look, let's get stuck into some of these questions. I think, Rob, I'm going to throw to you first. I think the first thing we'll be talking about is just SOC generality. So, you know, why should someone look into a career in working in the SOC? Why is a SOC an attractive start to a career?
It's a great question, Dave, and I'll put a bit of thought into this because if I think back 5 to 10 years ago, the SOC had this perception of it being low-skilled, repetitive type work, and it's anything but that nowadays. It's one of those few roles where you get hands-on experience, a variety of all aspects of security technology, and besides maybe penetration testing, where else do you get that full spectrum of threats and vulnerabilities and malware and containers and cloud resources and everything? So the exposure, the breadth and the depth that you get sets a foundation unlike any other career in cybersecurity. And lastly, I think Joyce alluded to it. The other great thing that I've really seen in the context of a security operations center is that real sense of camaraderie and teamwork. Everybody has a sense of mission and purpose. Everybody's there to protect the organization, and it's you versus the bad guys. So it really is about that first breadth, depth, and teamwork. Great start to a career.
How about anybody else? You know, I'm sure you'll all have different views on this. Anybody like to add? Maybe Frank? You've been in this space for a while.
Yeah, thanks, David. You know, the reason I didn't jump in there is I potentially couldn't amplify the comments more. I think you did a fantastic job of mentioning it there, Rob. I can't amplify teamwork enough. And you know, coming from a background of being in the Defence Force, of being in high performing teams, a SOC really does need to bond together. And realistically, you work in an area where there is a significant amount of unknowns when an attack takes place, and being able to work together and the camaraderie that comes forward is something that isn't lost on me. So I will just amplify the teamwork comment.
Any, Catherine or Joyce, anything you'd like to add? Okay. Look, I think there's one point I'll emphasise, and Rob, you mentioned it about, it was sort of, you know, a few years back, it was perceived as a lowly, you know, low-skilled type role, right? It was really sort of that log monitoring type role more so than, if you look at what a SOC analyst is today, it is a highly technical, highly specialised skill set, right? And I think probably our listeners here have recognised that themselves, and you know, but I think that's a good demonstration on how cybersecurity as a profession has evolved as well. We are a true profession; it's a true niche skill set, and you know, it's that career development and the maturation of our practice is what you know, it's said is driving those changes. So it was a good point there, Rob. I'm going to throw to you, Joyce. What are some of the unconventional ways that people can get into the SOC or establish a career in the SOC? Maybe some unique career paths that you've seen or experienced.
So it's a cool question. So I think for those that already in this call, we come with a different variety of background. But for those that is considering to join, I will highly recommend us to take a look at the NICE framework, which is actually from the NIST standard. So actually my team was actually built aligned with that framework, so that in that NICE, the NICE framework, although it's from the US, right? But I think it gives us a clear picture of the workforce. So in that framework, there are actually having different kind of category, and then they have specific role and also the skill set that required to do the task. And also there is a career pathway tools that is interactive, give you an understanding of how you can move across a different domain. I must say within the cyber career, there is no boundary. So we need to define ourselves, because I realized that in my last experience with a few organizations, we take up our job, we define our job in certainly different way. So I think the most there is no clear path of how you start your career in the SOC, but just stay interested and with a growth mindset, because it's basically an interesting, exciting job. It's a job that is a career that with a purpose, with a mission. So, but back to that question, I think recently I just realized that many of us actually have a military background. So I think when we are running a SOC, when we are securing our company, our mission critical infrastructure, so somehow it's like have some cross path with military. Like actually my peer at work is actually from a military background. But we also have I see someone from the privacy officer. They join as a legal advisor. Most of us actually in my current company, we have a few overlap with the crime investigation as well. So there is no boundary, and I feel like for anyone that has a intrinsic interest in securing the nation, the company, then just come and join us, because we are at the SOC, we are tasked with that great mission.
I think you honed in some really, really good points there, and I think the key thing that I take away from that is, traditionally, I guess people have viewed SOC roles as you needing to have a strong technical background, right? But actually, we all know the power of diversity and inclusion in a workforce, right? And you might not have the strong technical backgrounds, but these are things you can learn. And coming in with a different perspective, a different skill set. You mentioned people from the privacy space, people from fraud and investigations. They're not traditionally your technical specialists. So bringing that in, you've got these transferable skills and this curious mindset, which allows you to apply those behaviors and have a very, very successful career. And it's actually great for us as leaders, because we get this high performing team, because you just get those natural benefits of having a diverse and inclusive organisation and function. So great points there, Joyce. I guess coming to you then, Catherine, I'm going to ask, for somebody wanting to consider a role in a SOC, what advice would you give them, or what things should they be considering?
So I think there's a couple of aspects here, and rather than go with technical skill set, which I will cover, I think this is more of a mindset choice and a lifestyle choice. Look, some of the previous speakers have talked about how you have to have really great team skills, because that helps. So I think you've got to want to work closely with people. Gone are the days where the view on a SOC is you sit in there and you wait until something goes boop on the screen, and then you jump in and there's some action. I think it's quite different. It's quite dynamic, but the strength of the response from any SOC is the people you work with. So be mindful of that. If you want to work on your own, this is probably not an ideal role for you, although those roles do exist within a SOC. I'd also say think about your lifestyle. There's probably going to be consideration for some shift work at some point in time. Is that going to suit you? Is that something you want to do or you're accepting of? That needs to be considered. And I think the paths from there are quite diverse. And, Joyce has talked about some of the diversity of choices on people coming into a SOC, but I think there's also diversities of where that can lead you within the SOC itself, but also within the larger security organisation. And that really comes down to, do you come in as a graduate? You're fresh, you might have a degree. and you're ready to go. Or you might come in someone who's a little bit further down in their career and you'll have certain skill sets. Perhaps it's in privacy, perhaps it's in forensics, or, you know, you're a network specialist. That's absolutely going to help in a SOC. So I think there's lots of different entry levels here. And ultimately what we're looking for is a team that works well together. So the sum is better than, you know, the single person.
Yeah, look, great points on the you know, the teamwork element, and not, you know, if it's a role that you want to go and work alone in, it's probably not the right role for you. I think that's massively key. So Frank, considering everything we've just spoken about, and you run a very professional managed defence and response company, and obviously you have, you know, you offer career paths for your employees. Think about what are some of the benefits or skills an analyst can expect to develop professionally in their career, or even personally in their career.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and I think it's actually at the heart of it is the reason why I think a SOC analyst is really one of the best places to get into a cyber role. And if I think about, you know, the things that you're going to get exposure, you're going to get teamwork, you're going to get development, and I just want to unpick each quickly. In terms of exposure, and I think this is a really important piece, and Rob used the word full spectrum, which I liked. You are only or very highly likely to work in large-scale environments. We just don't see SOCs in the small to medium enterprise market, and that is important when you get into cyber, because you're operating in some of the largest, most modern environments. The tools are modern, the skills are modern, the stakes are high. And I think the skills you'll learn throughout that exposure can't be understated in any way, shape or form. What I will also say is that you will be involved in breaches. In terms of exposure, I'm sure we all play cops and robbers when we were kids. Ultimately, you're the cops, and there's nothing more satisfying when you're part of a SOC knowing that you have stopped an attack and you've saved a business. And that exposure and that to those environments and those attacks will actually go on to define your cyber career. So I think that's really important. We've touched on teamwork, and I won't labour it because I think we've been there. But every SOC that I have ever worked in has a strong team bond because you're all in it together. And when the breach is underway, it's the person standing left or right of you that really matters. And you will be amazed how strong a bond you will form with people who are not part of the SOC, whether it be your customers, whether it be other members of the team in your organisation. When you have been involved in a breach together, it is something that will stick with you for life. And you will smile when you pass each other in a hallway. The final point I made is around development, and this really comes back to, you know, one of those earlier comments, which is, you know, unconventional ways to get into the SOC. It is a melting pot of people. I've never seen a more, you know, and this is the cyber industry in general, a more ragtag bunch of people who've come from different walks of life to form a high-performance industry. So please do not discount in any way, shape, or form where you came from. I'll give an example that one of our best and fantastic analysts now was actually working on the docks not too recently, you know, as a crane operator. So please do not discount yourself, but that development and that melting pot of people from different walks of life will actually drive your development. So I'll come back to my 3 points: exposure, really important, teamwork and that bond, and then finally development. They're the 3 that really stick with me. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Frank. I'm going to open that up to anybody else to see if they'd like to, you know, add any colour to that. But that was very good. Thanks, Frank.
I'll jump in here, Dave. I think one of the big things, one of the big benefits that I see out of analysts that come through and do a good stint in a SOC is really developing that lateral thinking and problem-solving skills. Quite often you've got to find a variety of ways to achieve an outcome, especially when you're in incident mode. And so that adaptability and being able to solve problems on the fly and think laterally is something that really comes through in analysts today.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I'm going to throw one question out to everybody here, and And, you know, we've been very serious so far. Let's think about a funny moment. Is there any, open it up to anybody here, are there any funny or interesting stories that you can share about working in a SOC? Like, we've spoken about how intense and hard it is. What are some of the lighter moments? Rob, do you have any perspectives on that?
Yeah, I was thinking through, obviously, the things that you can share in a forum like this, and the one example that brought a smile to my face was, it's really easy in organizations to jump at shadows when you're a SOC. Every blip might be a cyber event or an attack. And we had this one instance where an application team that ran one of our, internet-facing channels went into crisis mode because they started to see in one of their monitoring tools that was showing a representation of their website, all of these subdirectories on the website that were like pornographic names and obscenities and profanities. And we thought that the system had been compromised. So we went into investigation mode. So we kind of got the tools ready and we were rolling out forensics. We were about ready to shut things down. And we sort of stopped and we thought, hang on, what's the source of this info? Like what's causing this? And it ended up being an application monitoring tool that was kind of reflecting what the web requests were that were coming through and representing it as the structure of the website. And so fortunately, we found the right people that ran the tools. We kind of validated what was actually happening here. And it was literally just some script kiddie out on the internet throwing a word list at our website, trying to figure out if any hidden subdirectories existed. And so kind of funny point and moral of the story is validate your sources, validate the evidence and use data and follow the evidence trail. And that was a funny moment that you can laugh about in hindsight.
Yeah, you can imagine, what was going through the people's head at that time and wanting to find that user that was doing inappropriate stuff in the corporate environment, right? So
exactly.
Anybody else have a story they'd like to add? That's fine. That's fine.
Perhaps not a story, David.
Go, mate. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay.
I'll just briefly add one comment. Yeah, user behaviour. So it's not necessarily a story, but just remember you're at the other end of having visibility into very large-scale environments, and you'll regularly see amusing user behaviour. And don't, there's obviously a lot of banter in the team, which keeps some of that camaraderie alive. So there is a lot of enjoyable moments in a SOC. It is not just a monotonous job.
Right, let's move on to sort of some of the visibility and networking elements of this. Catherine, I'll come to you. What's the best way to connect and network with fellow peers as a SOC analyst, either within the organisation or more probably importantly, external to the organisation and across your broader industry peer group?
So I think firstly, internally is a no-brainer. It's the people you work with and making sure that you've, got good relationships with them and ask them, what kind of meetups do they go to? And unfortunately, I can't speak specifically about every jurisdiction, but I can certainly say within Australia, there's the Australian Information Security Association, and they run branch meetings that sometimes focus on the SOC or, SOC analysts themselves. So good to join a good industry body. I would recommend that in your particular country. And there are certainly lots of benefits you can get from something like that. I think there's also other groups that you might want to join. There's industry groups. Again, I'll have to give the Australian version. So in the sector I work in, there's the Energy Intelligence Group, and that's specifically for, anything that we might be able to share intelligence-wise that might be hitting us. Largely in the SOC, we'd be seeing the results of that. Can be the rest of the security organisation can go along to it, but I find those are great forums to get involved in. So I'd say, ask your peers which ones they go to, and large industry bodies are usually a pretty good place to start.
Right. Frank, Rob, I reckon you would probably have some ideas on this space operationally.
I'll jump in first. I think the big one for me is the conferences, the meetups, the kind of the I'm seeing the merging of kind of the SOC and the hacker community a lot in the industry events and the forums that people attend. But things like in Australia, ACSC or even the JCSCs, the Joint Cybersecurity Centres, they're running some excellent topics nowadays that are ideally you could attend in person and interact with your colleagues there, because quite often it's fellow blue teamers that are showing up to learn from the speakers and absorb that knowledge.
All right. I'm gonna.
Can I just add one? I think in Hong Kong and every year and around this time, there is the Hong Kong CERT will organize something like a Capture the Threat event. So it's a actually great exchange of experience that we catch up. So we form a team. Usually my SOC guy, they will form a team with something outside the SOC, like the network analysts, the system analysts. They form one team altogether. Also the risk team as well, to form one team to go for some competition and make some networking with a local practitioner.
And actually, thanks for that. While we have you, I'm going to ask you to give us your perspectives on, this part of the topic is really about visibility and networking, building your own brand, right, and being recognised as an excellent, practitioner. Have you got any advice or thoughts or guidance on how analysts can use social media platforms, things like LinkedIn, to help elevate their visibility and help build that brand and sort of help improve their presence and network?
I think it's a good question. I think a brand is not about just one analyst or the company, but I think it's the practice. So I believe in general, the SOC guys are very low profile, I must say. But there are lots of good practice that they can actually share, regardless of what organization they work at. So in the social media, we can freely share with the international standard our experience of whether that work or not, right? So I believe like in our social media like LinkedIn, we learn from each other. We build our own network by following other thought leaders, and also we like I just mentioned, sometimes we recruit a teammate to form a cross organization team to do some competition in the SOC industry.
Can I just add something further to those comments from Joyce? I think you've all got to realise that LinkedIn is the place that recruiters go to, and I'm not suggesting you want to be out there changing roles all the time, because that's not beneficial to your career. But you really need to curate the image that you put up onto LinkedIn, and I often refer to it as this is your shingle. This is your what do I want the world to know about me, and how do I want to sell myself and manage my brand. So I think you've got to be fairly careful about what you put up there and make sure that it has the information that you want to project, so that if there is an opportunity, you're ready to go for it, and that your profile is representing you well.
Right. And I'm going to cut over to you, Frank, for the next couple of questions. And maybe we can bring them into the one question. But in terms of, as a leader or a manager of a SOC, security operations MDR business, what have you seen in terms of good ways for analysts to be seen as visible, and what are the characteristics that you look at to help define that world-class status? That would be characteristics of the SOC, and it would also be characteristics of the individuals as well.
Yeah, thanks, David. It's a good question, and it's funny. I was only asked this by an analyst we were interviewing this week. What do I look for in a good analyst? And I'd say I'd start by my opening comment is it's exactly what I look for most people in any jobs outside of analysts. So let's not forget that being polite, being courteous, being reliable, and caring about your job is probably just as important in any job, without talking about any sort of nuances. If you wanted to, and they're the things that I look for, reliability being one. When it comes to some specifics around SOCs, analysts, and what sort of makes one stand out from the next, everyone's incredibly valuable and they have their part to play, but I'd always encourage people to solve problems. So, we have spoken about, what you call a legacy environment where SOCs were an alert factory and you followed processes. Don't be part of an alert factory. Solve problems and look for ways to make your life easier. And that's something that stands out for me. The other big point I would say, which is important to me, is putting yourself out there. So I always ask of anyone within our organisation to have a go. And I can't think of the amount of times in my career that I didn't know the answer to the question, but I certainly put myself out there and I said, look, I don't know the answer. I think it's this, and I'm probably within 80% of the answer, but I'm going to come back to you when I find out the answer, and making sure that you come back to that person. And I think that's really important because that shows your ability to stretch yourself, your ability to at least get 80% right on target, but also going away and doing the work and coming back with the right answer. And I think, in the second part of your question, what makes a world-class SOC, and bleeding into that, I think is culture and focus on mission. And some of that is some of the things that I spoke about. A CISO that I feel very fondly about always, talks about culture as her number one weapon. So I think that's really important. But I think ultimately, like any organisation, if you believe in your SOC or you believe in your organisation and that it's trying to do good, I think you will perform. And I think ultimately, probably the final point I make on a world-class SOC, it's just as much about resisting technology as it is embracing it. So the worst organisations I've worked in have way too much technology, and the worst SOCs have too many ways of doing the same thing. All I'd argue is that you need to do fewer things well. Would be, I guess, one of the the secret ingredients in a recipe.
All right, thanks, Frank. Anybody else want to add anything about, particularly let's hone in on the world-class SOC statement? I think those attributes are pretty diverse. I think we're all going to have a different opinion on that. Anybody else like to weigh in on that?
I think Frank's point about culture.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're right. I think Frank's point about culture is definitely one of the top ones. The other thing for me is continuously learning, proactive. I loved Frank's point about the alert factory. To me, that's a very reactive type environment. Being proactive, being adaptable, and supporting each other as a group. They're sort of what I see when I think of where we want world-class SOCs to be, is culture, learning, proactive, adaptable, and supportive.
Mm-hmm. Joyce, you had something you wanted to say or wanted to add?
Yeah, I want to emphasize something like the resilience, because I think the SOC has a key part to maintaining the overall cyber resilience of a organization. So the resiliency, it's one of the things that I believe will reflect the performance of the SOC. And another thing is the technology that Trent just mentioned. I believe we are like a Formula One driver, right? So we want to have a world-class racing car to get the job done, right? So I believe the technology, it's really something that can enable us to do automation, analytic, more proactive threat hunting in our environment. So I believe that with the resilience design and also with the technology in place.
The one thing I'd add to this, and everything that's been shared is absolutely spot on in terms of how would you measure the SOC from a world-class perspective. I think there's one really other very important attribute, is how does that SOC come together to drive betterment across the industry? So how do they drive things like public-private partnerships, collaboration across other, peer organizational, SOCs and those sorts of things, and sharing that information. and really pushing the envelope and how do we mature as a practice. That, for me, is something that really outshines SOCs that are very, very good at what they do versus ones that are world-class. That, for me, is a bit of a subtle difference. All right, I'm just conscious of time. We've got about 10 minutes left before we get into Q&A. And there's still a lot of good stuff we can talk about here. I'm going to skip straight to career progression, because this is part of this conversation is about the growth of a SOC analyst or cybersecurity professionals. And this is about getting perspectives from executives around how you can help grow your career and what do those career options look like. I think this is hugely important to get these perspectives. So I'm going to start with Catherine. What advice can you share with cybersecurity professionals or analysts that want to transition into management or leadership roles?
So I think the first thing you've got to recognise is that when you're in a SOC analyst role, you are doing the work. And if you think about transitioning into management, you will gradually devolve the doing and you will become a manager of people who do the work. And it's quite a different focus. So you'll not be leaning in necessarily and saying, do it this way. That's, I think, always very poor management. But you need to manage and curate others who had the role that you once had. And that's a pretty big decision to make because it is different. Your focus is now on making sure the people in your care are well managed, both from an HR and a technical perspective, that you're driving for results across a team rather than just focusing on the results for yourself. So I think it's a different mindset and it's a different focus.
Okay. Frank, I'll direct this question to you. Further to that, what alternatives are there to career progression outside of management? And why should analysts consider that?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent consideration. I would say that technical management is a thing. So, the obvious path is either to be a technical manager within your sphere. And then the other two that really come to mind is a consulting career or even pre-sales as sort of, three that jump out at me. Let's just talk about tech management for a second. And I think, I couldn't have put it more clearly than Catherine. But for those who've been on the tools, it is very hard to step away from them when you deeply feel like you're the one that should be doing the work. And what I'd say in tech management, although it's not a full management leap, it's a recognition that you understand enough about the tools and the way that they're strung together to back yourself to think, well, if I can manage the technical outcome, even though I might not be doing the 80% on the work, on the tools, can I perhaps get a better effect if I move into that position than the person next to me? So, I always encourage people to think seriously about at least moving into technical management. Consulting is the other angle I think of. Project work can be intense as a consultant, but what I'd also add is there's probably a little bit less baggage from when you've been in a BAU role for a number of years that I'm sure we've all been in that builds up. So there's a couple options there, and don't rule out pre-sales. Sales is not a dirty word. It takes all facets of life to make an organisation, and you've got some fantastic people across those three skill sets, in my opinion. So they're my thoughts.
How about you, Joyce? Do you have some thoughts around career paths beyond the SOC?
Well, it's something like a vertically and also on a wide horizon. So I think for the lateral movement, we like in my team currently, we do have a security design role, architect role, if we lateral grow or move within the cyber division. And also, if across the within the same organization, I think there are overlaps and easier to lateral move to general IT operations and infrastructure. And we also see job rotation between our own division, like from the cyber and with the risk team, and also, like I said, because we have our own crime investigation team. So sometimes I see people lateral move across these teams. Just like what Fran said, if you want to take up a more challenging job than a consultancy role, it's a hot demand right now in everywhere around the globe.
Yeah, just my personal opinion. Like I think, and take it for what it is. One of my previous roles, I covered fraud, investigations, cyber. I really enjoyed the fraud and the investigation space, and having gotten into that later in my career, I thought that was a fantastic place to be, and I preferred that over the cyberspace. But the early skills and knowledge that you pick up in the cyber world, really helps you think about how you can grow your career much more broadly. So, great points about some of the teams that you've seen do that horizontal move and that growth. Look, this is a really important question, and I think we spoke. The next question. We've spoken about how intense and tough it can be, and how cybersecurity professionals, SOC analysts, need to be personally resilient, because it is a tough role and it can be intense, it can be high pressure. I'm going to cut to you first, Rob, but I'd like everybody else to have a think about, if you've got anything to add around what have you done as executives running these functions. What have you done to help manage sort of burnout and support that work-life balance, challenge? We heard about how it can consume your world. It's an intense world. Work-life balance is something that we can't forget.
It's a super important point. I think somebody earlier, might have been Catherine, mentioned that it's a lifestyle choice, and people who are passionate about it can very quickly become consumed by the continuous learning or the opportunities in front of them. And for me, I'll split this into two. From a leadership perspective, for the day-to-day, it's really about really personally knowing your staff, not as an analyst, but as a human, watching for those signs of pressure, giving diverse work and opportunities and challenges to break the rhythm and the rut that you could sometimes find yourself in, and change up their work accordingly. Make sure that people take time out and switch off is important too. It's a challenge that a lot of us find when you're in roles that you're really passionate about and you believe in the mission, but sometimes you've got to stop and really make a conscious choice about it. The second lens would be incident mode. It is really easy in incident mode for the adrenaline, the excitement, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 24 hours later and you've been going hard, with all of your teammates trying to understand and dissect the problem. So it's critical in those incident modes that somebody in your incident command structure is really designated with that OH&S responsibility. Somebody that it can keep it to, right, you've hit your time in the chair, Dave. It's time for you to clock off and go and get some sleep. Next analyst's coming on, and we're running, as a team, not as a bunch of individuals. So those two modes of operation, I think burnout is something you need to look at in both modes.
I'm going to reflect on something personally, and I hope you don't mind, Rod. I'm going to call you out. You and I have worked together in the past, and you talk about people who are committed and passionate about this, who just continue to go. I could not get you to stop. Like, you were a machine, my friend, and sometimes I didn't know when you slept, but I'm glad to see that you're taking action to manage that for your team, because it's massively important.
Jury's still out on that, Dave, and I was wondering why I got given this question, but yes. Look, it's something that all of us need to play a role in, right? Because we're only as good as the people in the team, and I think that's come through a lot in today's conversations, and that needs to be front and center in our minds.
Can I just add to the comments you've made, if it's okay? Look, I think sleep is my superpower. I think it's incredibly important to make sure you get enough of that. But a couple of other things that I always look at is You've got leave, it's there for a reason. Sometimes you just need time out, and the best way of doing that is to get away. When you can't do that, my solution's always been do something totally different to what you do at work. Sport's always been a great one for me. I love hitting a ball hard. You can take your frustrations out on a board. It's awesome. So, I've played hockey for years, field hockey, then played polo. And, those things give just a very different sense of self and really take your mind away from work.
All right. I'm just looking at time. We're doing pretty well on time. One more question, then we're going to cut to Q&A. And this is a question for each and every one of you on the panel. What one piece of advice would you like to leave with the audience today? I'll start with you, Joyce.
Today, I am happy to know that some of our practitioners got an award. So the takeaway would be when after this call, go back and then award yourself. So I think all of us in the SOC team, we are tasked with so many things, big and small. So get a break, get yourself a coffee or chocolate bar to have a short break, and then realize that how important you have been in your team for the organization. Because sometimes I realize that while we are I like that last question, like the work-life balance. I think we tend to bring the work home sometimes with that's what our CISO couldn't sleep well at night, right? So we share with his problem, and then we take those problem issue home, right? So I believe like sometimes we forgot to please ourselves. So just I'm happy that today some of our peers in the industry got an award recognition, but the last but not least, we need to recognize ourselves too.
Right. Frank, any last words of wisdom from you?
Oh, look, I think I'll just amplify my comment I made earlier. One thing that I see people resisting this industry is because it is very difficult and challenging. All I'd say is be comfortable in the idea that you don't know everything, but also be the sort of person to find the answer and bring it back to the table would be my piece of advice.
Rob?
Yeah, probably building on Frank's point was keep learning. There's so much out there that is there to be learned that you can then apply on the job. And this whole conversation has been about both entry level and growing your career, and knowledge is power in the cyber industry, and being able to apply that knowledge and communicate it is the secret sauce. So they're probably my key points.
Okay, and last but definitely not least, Catherine.
I think know yourself, a little bit of introspection. What do you really want out of life? Career's a very big part of your life. What are the drivers for you, and what's the level of success that you want, and what is that success? So I think in investing some time in some introspection and understanding those things about yourself is critically important to where you take your career. And finally, have a plan.
Yeah, definitely. All right, look, thank you very much, panelists. I just want to say really, really valued your input and your insights here, and personal thank you for supporting us. We're going to move into, for supporting this great event. I think there's actually two questions that I want to call out. I'm very conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes, so we want to try and keep that brief. And I know, Kane, you need to wrap up quickly. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to call out, and please, anybody jump in who would like to answer this. Kyla Vasquez has asked, do you have any advice to share? And I think this is a great question, by the way. Do you have any advice to share for a new SOC analyst, both in general and in the interview process? Anyone want to take that? I'm
happy to go first here. I'll go first. I think the big thing for me is find a manager, find a leader, find a team, find a culture that suits you and will help support and grow your career. It's a critical piece of making sure that your boss has got your back and is going to help invest in you and your career and give you opportunities and variety. So advice as a new SOC analyst, which is the point, is find your fit.
Anybody want to give any advice on the interview process?
Yes, I'd like to add to that. Interview processes, we all go through them. The more you do, the less frightening they are, hopefully. Sometimes they're always frightening. Most of us know the kind of questions that are going to get asked. So write them all down and give them to someone you trust, a good friend, and say, ask me these questions. I need to practice them. Not so you've got a rote answer, but so you've got a bit of comfort in how you're going to present that. And I think, again, practice helps you organise your thoughts and come up with a really, really good, strong response.
Right. All right. We're going to
and
move
I
on to
also
the second
add a little bit, if I'm allowed to, because at the interview, don't bound yourself by the JD. The SOC analyst job is not something that can describe by a piece of paper, right? So I like what Catherine said, practice make perfect, right? But again, don't bound by yourself. Know your potential to the SOC team and also to the organization.
All right. And conscious there's 3 minutes left. There's one last question. So I'm going to ask one of you to answer this. And then I know, Kane, I know you need to wrap up and summarise. So Hakaret Singh asks, what is the best way to keep up with continuous learning, staying up to date with news and still excelling at your work? How would you split your day or week to achieve all of that? I'm probably going to pose that one to Rob, since you brought it up as a key piece of advice.
Yeah, look, it's tough, and it only gets harder as you get older with broader life commitments. So for me, it's about, finding that, that newsreader tool that can help keep you across the latest things. It's about following the right people on LinkedIn that will help curate the internet for you and then share the things of interest. But probably one of the biggest things I'd say is find a subject matter in an area that you're really, really interested in and get hands-on and set yourself a little project or a task or a goal and start getting hands-on with it, because information and learning really sticks for me personally, when it's hands-on. So combination of reading and practical learning, finding a way to fit that into the week.
Great. Okay, thank you very much once again, panelists. I'm going to hand over to Kane. We have about 60 seconds to wrap up and to finish on time. So, Kane, over to you. Thank you. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Dave. I'm delighted with how this afternoon's session has gone. A special thank you to David, Catherine, Joyce, Rob, and Frank. I know each of you have big roles that encompass lots of things to do and different facets, and we're really grateful that you find time to give back to the community. So thank you very much for that. In terms of SOC Analyst Appreciation Day, there'll be more content coming out from Devo on this great day. Tomorrow it's the 19th in the US, so you'll see a plethora of additional information come out tomorrow as well. And if you're interested in keeping up to date with our presenters, I guess, following or connecting with them on LinkedIn is probably a reasonable place to start. And thank you to everyone for joining us.
Great, thanks, Hank. And thanks, Devo, for pulling this together. Very much appreciated.
No trouble.
Thanks, everyone.